Hey everybody, welcome to Moment of Clarity. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for being there around the world, wherever you are. Please take a minute to share this, let people know, and click the thumbs up, all that good shit. I'm also on Rockfin, rockfin.com/Lee Camp. I'm going to get into several stories, talk a little bit about the George Floyd trial, talk about some protests that are going on around the nation, and talk about yet more proof that our stock market, Wall Street, whatever you want to call it, is a meaningless house of cards that the mainstream media and our financial entities and our politicians refuse to admit, even though they'll talk about things that make it obvious that it's a meaningless house of cards, that there's no there, as people say. But yeah, thanks for joining me. Good to have you here. Let's take a moment to talk about some stuff that's going on in the George Floyd trial. They've been talking a lot about. Oh, and by the way, all the donations, all the Super Chat donations or Rockfin donations are going to those in need. If you are someone in need of a few bucks to help you get through, then email commoncensored@protonmail.com, commoncensored@protonmail.com. But yeah, all those donations are going there. So the George Floyd, I'm not watching every minute of it, but I know that some of it in the past couple of days has been about what drugs George Floyd, had addiction issues with or had taken in the past. He had, his girlfriend said she and he had opioid addiction. And besides the fact that really we should take a moment as a nation to talk about the opioid addiction connected to this, this is the reason this is being brought up in this trial is because it's being used by the defense, the police officers, lawyers Derek Chauvin's lawyers who murdered George Floyd, not quickly, but over 9 minutes murdered him in the middle of the street. They're using this fact that George Floyd has done drugs or had an addiction issue in the past to undermine the case against this lawyer, against this police officer, Derek Chauvin. So now think about that. The fact that George Floyd had an opioid addiction, let's assume his girlfriend's telling the truth, had an opioid addiction, somehow means it's okay or more justified to murder him, to cut off his heir and kill him in the middle of the street. Because this guy had done drugs in the past, therefore, go ahead and fucking whack the dude. I mean, the whole premise of the thing is fucking repulsive. Yet you don't really, you don't hear a lot of this conversation. Maybe you're hearing a little in the mainstream, but it should be had a lot that in these trials of police officers or trials of people for other reasons, the fact that the person might have done drugs in their past or might have even done drugs in their present, does not mean that you can just kill somebody, that you can just arrest them for an unrelated crime. Oh, but they're a drug doer. That doesn't make them inhuman. That doesn't mean you can kill them. That doesn't mean that you're just allowed to break the law in order to get them, in order to shoot them, attack them, arrest them. Oh, he did drugs. Oh my God. Well, then absolutely execute him in the streets. I think we should have a policy. If you've done drugs, if someone smokes weed, I think we should all be able to shoot them in the streets. Why not? Sounds good. It's a good way to run society, no? Not to mention, let's see a list of the people in this country that have never done any type of substance that's drug or drug related. I'm talking no prescription pills. I'm talking no Robitussin. I'm talking no alcohol. I'm talking no steroids, no hard drugs, never smoked any weed. All right. I want to see that list. Let's put them out there and we'll let them be the judge of the rest of us. We'll let all three of those people across this entire country who've never done any substance, never even spun around till they were dizzy, feeling a little loopy in the head, never even held their breath until they started seeing stars, because that's, they're inhibiting their brain state, right? They're inhibiting their mental state. So, you hold your breath for a bit, you get a little loopy. That counts as, you can't trust them anymore, right? Because they're playing with their reality, with their, it's not a substance, but it still make you loopy, still make you act a little weird. You hold your breath too long. But the point is, pretty much everybody in this country has at some point done something, had a fucking beer or something. So the idea that you can then turn around and go, well, you had a different kind of drug. Sure, I'm chugging Robitussin each night, but you had an opioid, so that makes you a bad guy and me a good guy, because mine's over the counter. My problem is over the counter, so it's cool. Whereas your problem is, in the back alleys. It's the dirty kind. It's the evil kind. It's the Satan kind. Whereas me, I'm just fucking breaking up Adderalls and snorting them up my ass. I don't know if you can snort up your ass, but you get the point. No, of course. And even for the few people in this country, in this world, who haven't ever had a beer, haven't ever done any kind of prescription pill, nothing. Even for those people, I don't want them. Don't put them on my jury. They sound fucking awful. They're boring human beings. I don't want somebody who's never fucked with their mental state even just a little. Come on now. Whoever those 4 people are, 5 people across this country are who've never done a goddamn thing, I don't even want to meet them. They sound fucking terrifying, all right? Really? Never had a beer, never had a glass of wine, never inhaled a cigarette. All right, listen, if you don't smoke cigarettes and you go and fucking scarf down a few, tell me you aren't feeling loopy. Tell me it's not altering your mental state. I don't want them. I don't want them judging me either. But anyway, all of this is to say that this idea that when if someone's on trial, if you can say, isn't it true that once in 1987 you had a marijuana cigarette? And the person goes, yeah. And they go, all right. Clearly, he's guilty. The cops were the cops were completely justified in breaking both his legs and poking out one of his eyes because he did a marijuana cigarette 27 years ago. This idea that I hate that shit. Yes, if George Floyd were really bonked out on something and was just raging through that shop, just fucking knocking shit over and punching people in the balls, then it might be relevant. You still aren't justified in killing him, but it might be relevant in the trial. But you've seen the videos. That's not the case. So this idea that because he was an opioid addict, as his girlfriend says, at some point in the past or even in the present, that doesn't mean that you can kill him. Doesn't mean that you were justified in this awful fucking crime. Yet most of our mainstream media, they're bringing up some of this stuff, but they're not really getting into the fact that this shouldn't even be an issue. This shouldn't even be talked about. Thanks, guys. I'm seeing some of your comments, and I appreciate them. Oh yeah, Lola. Who's that joke from? Is that's Mitch Hedberg, right? I used to smoke weed. I still smoke weed, but I used to as well. By the way, these holier than thou cops and I don't, Chauvin hasn't been on the stand. I don't know how many cops they're going to put on the stand, but these holier than thou cops who are like, I had evidence that he had used cocaine at some point in the past few days. Like the cops I've known or seen, man, many of them are doing drugs, illegal drugs, but they're certainly drinking a shit ton of alcohol. There was a cop I knew. He would perform stand-up comedy, so I knew him at the comedy clubs in New York. He would pull up at the comedy club in his, he wasn't on duty, so he's plain clothes, regular car, but in his car with a fucking open beer bottle, 3 sheets to the wind, driving down the road. He didn't give a shit, because he knew if the other cops, the ones in uniform, pulled him over because he was swerving back and forth driving drunk, then he would just go, "Hey, buddies, I'm one of you guys. Here's my badge." And they'd go, "Oh, all right. Hey, could you try and swerve more to the left? Because it's easier for other drivers to get by you if you kind of keep your swerves going in one direction rather than back and forth." "Oh, okay, cool. Thanks, officers." But on top of that, even the cops that don't abuse alcohol or other drugs, there's a real steroid epidemic in the police force. I've covered this before. And steroids, guess what? They're another kind of drug, all right? They are also a drug. Whether they're the legal kind or the illegal kind, they can still cause a whole shit ton of behavior problems. And the estimates are, and by the way, most police are never tested for this, but the estimates are that 25% of police in urban areas are abusing steroids. And what does roid rage cause? What are the ramifications of abusing steroids? If you look at what what happens under roid rage when someone is roid raging, it's all the things you would not want in a fucking police officer. It's quick to anger. It's poor decision making. It's incredibly violent, easily offended, and so you get furious. It's all the things you would not want in a police officer, and it's all the things that would cause police abuse, police brutality, and yet even when a cop commits police brutality, they're not tested for steroids. We don't even talk about steroids. So 25% of cops are fucking abusing drugs, and then they get up there and they go, "Well, it was okay that I murdered this guy in the street because he used opioids." Da, da, da. And then someone plays a trumpet as he marches off into the fucking sunset. So, it's a bunch of horse shit going on in this trial, as you would expect. I don't know whether this cop, Chauvin, will get off or not. The odds are greatly in favor of him getting off, considering how many officers have actually been convicted in America of actual murder since 2005? 3. 3 cops. Roughly, 16,000 people executed by police? 3 cops have been convicted of murder. That's less than 0.024%. Not 0.2%, 0.024%. Don't forget the O. And you got to say it like that too, because it's fucked up. 0.024%. Remember that. Okay, so I wanted to get to some protests that are happening. This was in Washington, D.C., and we are getting the great videos and photos of this anti-pipeline protest from Eleanor Goldfield. You know Eleanor. She co-hosts my podcast and does the live streams with me sometimes. And anyway, this was in D.C. today, and I want to show you some of it. This is to stop Line 3, the pipeline that will be tearing through some of this country, including indigenous lands. Many from the indigenous community that are going to be harmed by this came to D.C. today, and in order to fight to stop this pipeline, and let's play a bit of video here. Eleanor's Twitter, by the way, if you want to look it up, is Radical Eleanor.
Under our rights! Under our rights! Respect our water! Respect our water! Respect our land! Respect our land! Under our treaty! Under our treaty! Under our rights! Under our rights!
So you heard them say honor our treaty, because this is yet again cutting through indigenous land, that the treaties that they've signed with the U.S. government going back years and years say that the U.S. government can't do this, can't just upend their land, can't just tear through their society, their world, and fucking pollute it with the worst garbage, the worst pollution you can fucking imagine, cancerous stuff dumped into their water supplies. And there is no such thing as a pipeline that doesn't leak. All right. They all fucking leak. So when these goddamn oil companies run around and say, it's all going to be safe. We're going to put it in there. We're just going to drop it in there. It's going to be fucking cool, man. It's going to be cool. We're going to have the best pipeline you've ever seen. Never going to break down. They all leak at some point. It can take 10 years. It can take 20 years, but at some point they leak, and at some point they ruin everybody's fucking water. And, that's just one of the many problems of having a pipeline tear through your land. So protesters, and it wasn't just indigenous there, it was people of all kinds that came out to join the protests. Let's check out some more images. They call it the black snake. So the black snake coils. This was outside the Army Corps building, because the Army Corps of Engineers are the ones that have to give the approval for this. So they're trying to get them to stop the approval.
Right? Okay. Thank you.
So that was also saying shut down DAPL, as you can see, demanding DAPL be shut down and Line 3 be stopped.
Land! 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 What do you do when your people are under attack? Stand up, fight back! What do you do when your water is under attack? Stand up, fight back! What do you do when your water is under attack? Stand up, fight back! What do you do when your people are under attack? Stand up, fight back!
And you might also notice that a lot of those are young people. This was a lot of children, teenagers coming back to demand clean water, to demand clean air, to demand that the Army Corps of Engineers shut this down. And this is just part of their protest against this. Many people have been, because I was talking about yesterday about the difference between doing something that's kind of like for education and for show, and doing something that actually interrupts business as usual. And they're doing that as well. There are people chaining themselves to the construction equipment, chaining themselves to, various trees, and, doing tree sits and various ways of interrupting business as usual, stopping the construction of these pipelines. And as I've covered before, if we can stop these pipelines for, who knows, 5 years, 10 years, we're quickly getting to the place where big oil is not profitable anymore. More things are switching to green energy. Big oil is having a harder and harder time making the billions of dollars that they're accustomed to. And if we can stop the fucking infrastructure from being put in, then these carbon explosions into the atmosphere will be stopped. So that's a big kind of point of how to of why this could be successful. Let's see. I got one more video here.
I have to say, I'm tired of this shit. We said no. No! Just like these people in front of us. They said no. The last time I was here, it was at a rally just like this one, talking about Dakota Access Pipeline and how those people said no. Here we are all these years later, the court said, oh yeah, they were right. We should have listened, but it was already built. And we're coming from my territory where we're fighting all out. We got 3 different tribal nations suing, saying no. People chaining themselves to equipment, people chaining themselves to all of the machines that are building this terrible, destructive force through our territory, through our wild rice beds, through our rivers, through our waters, through the headwaters of the Mississippi River. That's where these guys want to send tar sands from Alberta to the shore of Lake Superior.
it's madness, and it just keeps on going, right? Like, these guys just keep on going. So my message really isn't for them so much today, because they've heard this. They know what the difference between right and wrong. It continues to just be, well, what's in the best interest of greed, and how do we balance this out with like the kind of like pushback we'll get? And it's shameful. It is. It's fucking shameful. And I'm tired of it. I mean, honestly, we do this so much. We stand in front of places like this, so they do the right thing. They should have done the right thing in the first place, which is respecting indigenous sovereignty, respecting when we say no. We are nations that existed before this country. We still exist today.
There you go. There is, I'm sorry, I don't know the name of that speaker, but yeah, great protest, and the protest continues. It's much larger than just what happened today. And it obviously is much grander than just the indigenous, because this is a fight for our futures, all of our futures. Every one of us is impacted by these garbage fucking oil companies that put this shit in to the ground and exploit the oil and make their billions and pump our skies full of greenhouse gases. And these protests should have millions of people at them, and they have a few hundred or 1,000 or something. But there's a lot of joy in the resistance, and I don't mean the bullshit fucking neoliberal MSNBC resistance against Trump. We're the resistance, but we're not going to stand up against anything that this country does, any empirical wars, any oil pipelines, anything. We're only going to stand against Donald Trump himself. I don't mean that kind of resistance. I mean the real resistance. There is a beauty in it. There is a joy in it. There is a revelatory thrill in that resistance. And it's going to be long term. This is a marathon. This isn't a sprint. So fighting for the future of this planet is, get used to it and settle in and find your way to be a part of it and enjoy the fight, because it's not tomorrow we're going to go, oh, it's done. The oil companies gave up and everything's cool. So keep at it. Enjoy it. Grab the Gatorade at the little stand where the people hold the Gatorade. Grab a Gatorade, splash it in your face, and fucking keep going. Keep going. But yeah, that's line 3. And if you want to learn more about it, by the way, go to Eleanor's Twitter feed at Radical Eleanor. And she's putting up more there. Her website is artkillingapathy.com. But I wanted to, the story that I actually titled this video after is about our stock market, about Wall Street, and about yet another story that shows how it's all a fraud, how it has nothing to do, borderline nothing to do with actual companies creating things. We've moved to a new time, a new era, where the stock price is completely decoupled from reality, is completely life blind, environment blind, humanity blind. And this one has to do with Volkswagen's hilarious April Fool's Day joke. So Volkswagen, because they're putting out more electric cars, announced that they're changing their name in America to Volkswagen. Volt, as in electricity. And anyway, here is Bloomberg's article about it. But I want to point out what Bloomberg doesn't talk about and what none of your mainstream media will talk about. In the meme stock era, even bad Volkswagen jokes are worth billions. You can't blame Volkswagen for wanting a little bit of Tesla's glamour, but its April Fool's Day calamity shows the dangers of trying to be cool and funny. In a January column about Elon Musk, in a January column about how Elon Musk is basically in charge of the stock market now, I noted how others would try to copy the Tesla boss's success in co-opting retail investors. I had one caveat, though. Charming young Redditors in an authentic way isn't an easy act to pull off. This week, Volkswagen provided a lesson in just how difficult it is to beat Elon Musk. They claim they're changing their name to Volkswagen as an April Fool's Day joke, even though they initially denied it was an April Fool's Day joke. The German giant has been riding a wave of investor excitement about its electric car strategy, thanks in part to some clever social media and marketing. VW seemed to have cracked Musk's knack for share price boosting publicity. The more frequently traded VW preference shares are close to a 6-year high. And news of the name change caused depository receipts to climb as much as 12.5% Tuesday, which is where this cringeworthy incident goes from being a disastrous attempt at humor to something potentially more serious. Now, here's what they won't say. So basically, to sum up what he's saying is that Elon Musk has created a stock with Tesla that is worth an immense amount of money and gets traded a lot, and people are always buying it and talking about it, and it gets a lot of talk both in the financial industry and in just every average people trying to make money with trading. And it's not really connected much to what they actually do, to the actual cars rolling off the assembly line at Tesla, to actually how high their SpaceX got into the air before it exploded or whatever the fuck. It doesn't really have that much to do with reality. It's had a lot to do with glamour, as that guy said. The word, glamour. Oh, it's cool. It's cool to talk about Elon Musk. It's cool to talk about Tesla and what they're doing. Tesla. Do you remember a couple years back they shot a rocket into space, and it had a Tesla car attached to it, and then they let it drift off in space. So there's video of this car flying off into God knows where, and it's like, what the fuck was that about? What's the point of sending a car out into space just to watch it drift off? Well, it's all about the glamour, right? It's about the cool factor. It's about getting people talking about it. It's about everybody getting together the next day and going, did you see that car? They sent it out to fucking Mars. Yeah, that car's going to crash into Saturn. It's going to be crazy. That's what it was about. And why does that matter? That matters because stocks are traded now based on that kind of shit, based on nothing connected to actual production, nothing connected to what the company is really doing for society or not doing for society. And the stock goes up, right? The more we talk about Elon Musk, the more we talk about Tesla, the stock goes up, keeps going up. Yet Tesla, to my knowledge, is still not making money. Now, they, will one day probably. Same with Amazon, right? For the first, I don't know what it was, 10, 15 years of Amazon, they were actually not profiting. They were just growing and gobbling up the market while losing money. But people invested them because they figured, well, they'll gobble up the whole market and then they'll be able to make a lot of money, which they've done. Now, what this shows, though, which this article is, this article's rightfully saying that, hey, you can't always know how this meme stock shit is going to work. You can't always know what it's going to do for Volkswagen, whether it's going to make them look good or bad that they pretended they were changing their name to Volkswagen. But what it really means, the heart of it, that Bloomberg could never mention, and our politicians can never really talk about, and our mainstream media can never talk about, the heart of it is that the stock market is a Ponzi scheme. And I've covered this before, and I don't just mean it in the kind of rhetorical, it's a Ponzi scheme, everybody's getting fucked, it's a Ponzi scheme. No, I mean in the literal way. Like, you buy a stock from a company that means nothing. It is not connected to what the company does or sells or how they pay out. And the way you make money off that stock is by getting some other fool to buy it from you for more. All right. Now, that doesn't mean you can't make money doing it. You can make a fuckload of money doing it, but it is a Ponzi scheme. It is the idea of buying something that is nothing, because that stock's nothing. And actually, if you read the fine print of like a Google stock, it says if you brought it to Google and said, here's my stock, I want my money back, they owe you something like 0.001 cents, less than a penny. They owe you. So if they round it up, they'd give you a penny. You go, I bought Google stock for $12,000. I don't know what a Google stock costs now, but I bought this for $1,000. I don't want to be a part of your company anymore. Give me my money. They would slide a penny over to you, and they'd go, here you go. There it is. There's what we owe you for your stock. Enjoy that penny. We rounded up. We were feeling generous. We rounded up for you. Now, why does it say that they owe you basically nothing? Because that stock is nothing. It is nothing until you sell it to somebody else who buys it from you, and that's when you make money. But that is a Ponzi scheme. That's absolutely the money of the thing only comes from new investors coming in. So it's completely disconnected from reality. It's completely disconnected from the real world. And yet it destroys lives, right? People could lose their life savings on this shit. People have mutual funds built up in this shit. And they could have their lives destroyed over something that is completely disconnected from realities. And then you get into derivatives, which is another step removed from reality. So then you have nonsense stacked on nonsense, and then they trade on that nonsense, and then they trade on the future of what that nonsense could mean one day in future nonsense land. I mean, that is what our stock market has got. And don't kid yourself. This would all be fun and games. This would just be fucking idiots circle jerking, all, fucking whacking their willies. Okay, so some people are playing with things that don't mean anything. Who cares? Let it happen. They're having fun. If it makes them feel good, fine. But here's the thing. This shit has massive power. Not just from, I was talking about people lose their life savings shit. That stuff happens. But it also has massive power in things like collapses, economic collapses that destroy lives. We saw how many millions of people got kicked out of their homes and their lives upended. 25,000 suicides are estimated to be connected to the 2008 collapse. God knows how many lives were destroyed with divorces and losing houses and all that shit. You add it all up. I mean, how many lives are destroyed based on this imaginary play world of pretend stock money shit? It's just crazy. But then it also has a power in terms of, like, for example, when Trump said he was going to create peace with North Korea for the first time in decades. He said he was going to make it happen, and people believed he might. And what happened? The stocks of weapons contractors went down a lot. And that has power. That causes all of these fucking wealthy oligarchs to flip out, and they go running to the Congress people they control and the other people in the president's cabinet. And some of them even have the ear of the president. And they say, you can't do this. It's fucking over our money. And when their money's fucked over, they don't sit around and watch. They do shit. They get in there and they make sure that things continue to help them make money. So you see that the stock moving in a certain way creates a reality so that stock can continue to do well. Even if most of the fucking trading that's going on is disconnected from reality. I mean, it's just amazing how much of a fucking ephemeral fucking, it's imaginary spider web attached to a fart. It's like, that's how secure our fucking stock market is, how meaningful it is. It has become so separated from life, decoupled from life and humanity and environment, and yet it's like half of what people talk about. How's the stock market doing? How's the economy doing? But people don't seem to care whether that is connected to how lives are doing. Like, you look at the stock market and you say, well, it's doing great, but everybody's suffering. then what's the fucking point? What is the point? The real point nowadays is that it means the rich are celebrating. You look at the stock market's doing well, great. The rich are celebrating. The rich like that they have a lot of money. That's all it means. It means nothing more. And so we should look at it and go, well, fuck them. Every day you hear the stock market went up, you should go, well, fuck them. Not what most Americans do, what most people do, is they see the stock market is doing well or went up or whatever, and they go, great. Even if they're not invested in it, they go, great. That means the society's doing well. That means my life will be okay, hopefully. They say, great, even if most average people around this world are suffering or struggling, or people can't find food and water and housing and clothing, and yet we look at the stock markets doing great because it's not connected to reality any longer. And that's how you end up in a place where Volkswagen will create an April Fool's joke because they wanted to get attention, because they're hoping that attention equals people buying their stock. And it happens, and it works. I don't know. That article was claiming it backfired, but either way, this kind of crap works. Elon Musk tweeting something that is either nonsense or upsets a bunch of people, or, when the video of Elon Musk smoking weed on Joe Rogan's show went viral, it ended up, at first, I think it hurt Tesla's stock for a minute, but then it ended up helping Tesla's stock because everybody, we're talking about it for weeks. And they were like, oh, Elon's cool like us. But what does that have to do with what the fucking company is doing? Nothing. Really nothing. And yet it helps the stock because the stock is not a real thing. It's an imaginary financial instrument. They have all these euphemisms that they use so that people like you and me don't know what the fuck's going on, but it's a financial instrument. Yeah, that anytime you see that, fucking cinch up your pants a little bit because you're about to get screwed. Anytime someone says financial instrument around you, you should fucking worry. All right, guys. Well, let's see. Try and check some of these comments. But yes, then it goes to the Caymans. They all have their tax havens, massive tax havens for these companies. I actually went down to, we did it for, this is before I did Redacted. I had Redacted tonight, but we did it for an investigative video piece with Other 98% was the organization. And we went down to the Cayman Islands for like 2 days and went in to the largest tax haven maybe in the world. It's this tiny little building, 2-story building that has 40,000 or something, or just, I can't remember. There's thousands upon thousands of businesses that are located there. Of course, it's just P.O. boxes for all of them. So that's how they can fit 40,000 or whatever the number is businesses in a 2-story building. But it's a tax haven. And we went there and made a silly video while we were there. I mean, it's not just silly. It's also important. But let's see. And yes, I mean, and what we're talking about here with, Elon Musk's shit. And this is a form of stock market manipulation. The SEC is okay with this kind of stock market manipulation for the most part, but it's basically stock market manipulation. Lola says gross domestic happiness. I absolutely agree that we need to get rid of gross domestic product, which is part of the reason that we are killing the planet. Acting like just endlessly producing is the only measurement of what matters in life, when in fact we should measure things far differently. And Bhutan, the country of Bhutan, has gross domestic happiness, which measures things that, and people love to go, well, Bhutan is a theocracy or whatever, or bring up something in Bhutan's past that's not cool. And I'm not saying everything about Bhutan is wonderful, but gross domestic happiness is a far better way to set these things up. It means they have a lot. They measure things like green space. They measure health of the citizens, happiness, obviously. And that's how they decide whether their society is functioning well, is doing well, rather than just production, rather than just how much can we consume and produce and shit out the other end. That is all that we consider in these equations as to whether our system is working properly. But of course, you can have GDP through the roof and be killing the planet, be destroying your environment, be destroying your future. You can do all of those things, and GDP is doing fucking awesome. So we all stand around high-fiving while there's a massive fire behind us burning everything down. So yeah, gross domestic happiness, definitely a better way to go. I did not know this, but I guess everyone should look this up. There will be protests for Julian Assange at the CNN and CBS buildings. So I guess you guys can Google that. I was unaware. I can't keep track of everything. I'm doing the best I can, all right? Okay, guys. Podcasts, Common Censored, Government Secrets, Moment of Clarity. Hope you'll check them all out. And I will see you soon. Keep fighting.